I just want to thank you so much for all the help over the years. You are not just an inspiration in the patient advocacy group, but you're a thought leader as far as health policy goes and patient care goes. So I'm very grateful for our friendship, very grateful to treat you with peptides, whether that's traditional GLPs, the what have you. So I just want to take some time to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started talking about peptides. If I started researching peptides, but let's go back to when I was first prescribed hormone replacement therapy. I started getting really bad hot flashes, and I was getting one an hour, and I became so crazy about it, Jay. I started to keep a hot flash journal because I said it's got to be something I'm doing on my end. Now, your viewers may or may not know that I have competed in 3 fitness competitions, which they're basically like bodybuilding shows, and I still train 6 days a week. Everything I did wasn't working, so we decided to go on hormone replacement therapy. But it was scary because my mom has breast cancer, her mom had breast cancer, her mom's sister, and all of my first cousins. I'm the only one who doesn't have it. But we decided, okay, let's do HRT. And what I do is I do an ultrasound in January, a mammogram in June, just so I feel okay about using the hormone replacement therapy. So listen, hormone replacement therapy has changed my life for the better. And I think there was so much bogus anti HRT research done many years ago, probably by men. Although I like you, Jay, you're a man. But I think, women should have had a seat at the table, especially when it comes to discussing HRT. So I love my HRT.
You know, I would definitely agree that there was some gender-based bias as far as studies are concerned, going back decades, all the way back to really the start of the OBGYN as a specialty. What I think the broader issue at hand here is really a bias against objective analysis of data, where in the public health forum, as you know very well, people rush to conclusions with clinical studies and they don't actually evaluate the quality of the data itself. And it's a difficult line to find because there are studies that will show a heightened risk with hormone replacement therapy, whether that is true breast cancer or some degree of a neoplasm. Now, are those studies systemic and applicable to the generalized patient population? I think the literature is now suggesting that that is not the case. So, what is the real answer? Am I simply just talking out of both sides on my mouth? And that's the issue, right? Because it doesn't fit into this convenient narrative where we say, well, HRT good, HRT bad. Everybody simply wants that simple answer, simple question, move forward. Healthcare doesn't work like that. And your health doesn't work like that. And quite frankly, to the listening audience, you would not want your health to be decided by a simple yes or no question, right? The skill is in the nuance. Whether hormone therapy or peptide therapy is right for you is really a very individualized decision that comes under multiple factors of lifestyle, behavioral changes, and the quality of the medicine and the protocol that you're applying. So you now
Mm.
have multiple factors that you have to go through. So when the studies came out, and this is particularly in the 90s about hormone replacement therapy and breast cancer, they were very aggressively interpreting the data to be negative in nature. Now, you can talk about the incentive structure of the people conducting the study, you can talk about the quality of the study itself, but I think the reality of the situation is just like what you see with COVID, with other public health issues. We just
Hmm.
have to take a step back and really analyze the data and more importantly, the limitations in the data so that we're making informed decisions for patients as opposed to reacting to the news cycles.
Yeah. Well, when I was just sitting there, I would be roasting from the inside out. And I was like, this sucks. This is no way to live. And then I was like, I'm doing something wrong. I'm not doing shit wrong. I know my life is, I live a very clean lifestyle. And I've got girlfriends. They are so against HRT, and I'll be sitting next to one of them. I was staring at one of my girlfriends. I was like, "You look like you're on fire right now. Here, take my doctor's phone number and get yourself some HRT." Do I know the risks involved? Absolutely. I don't want breast cancer, but I can't live, um, you know, like that. And I will say that progesterone, I love my progesterone. It helps me sleep great at night. So, yeah, for me, HRT, the reason I started looking into peptides probably 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I flew out to do an event and I saw myself on video and I said, Mama put some weight on. And, I had put on 10 pounds and I said, I was scrolling on TikTok like millions of Americans do, and I started to hear about peptides. There's a lot of information about peptides out there. Do you reconstitute your own peptides? What you're getting, are they safe? And I did a lot of research about peptides. And then I learned about Prestige 2.0. And then, I started getting my peptides from you, which was super convenient.
Thank you.
And I shed 10 pounds. It's an appetite suppressant, but I use that as an adjunct. I go to the gym. I eat very, very clean. I get a lot of sleep. So for me, peptides just kind of brought it all together. And I really want to venture into different types of peptides because I think they're awesome.
Yeah, I
And,
think
we need more conversations about peptides.
I think the clear and so first off, thank you so much for the positive feedback. It's gratifying to me as I start to see more and more patients benefit from these types of treatment modalities to see positive feedback. So thank you for that. I want to go back a couple of points and kind of go stepwise in terms of your personal journey and also some of the feedback you've been getting from your friends regarding HRT. So the reason why HRT is making the news that it did is because the FDA recently removed the what's called a black box warning for
Mhm.
HRT products as it pertains to menopause. Now, because that label has been removed, doesn't necessarily negate the risks that are there, but
Sure.
essentially what it demonstrates is that when used properly, the benefits outweigh the risk. Same thing if you were to take hydrochlorothiazide, HCTZ for blood pressure. Same thing as if you were to take lisinopril for blood pressure. All of these medications have certain risks, but we know that the benefits outweigh the risk. The reason why HRT and peptides in general are looked a little bit differently is because there's no clean clinical study design that has an objective outcome. Meaning,
Why?
and so let's go to your case about the menopause, the hot flashes, things of that nature. How can you truly quantify those conditions? They're qualitative in nature, so you describe them in terms of symptoms, and what you perceive to be symptomatic relief is a qualitative assessment of the decrease in the severity of the symptoms. I mean, that's all just a fancy way of saying, hey, I feel better, so they must be working, right? But the key thing is, like with blood pressure, you can't say, hey, medication X, reduction in blood pressure Y, therefore it's beneficial. With anti-hyperglycemic medicines, like the diabetes medicines, you can't look at the blood sugar trends and say, okay, well, it's working. With peptides and hormones writ large, what you start to see, and obviously the GLP-1s with the weight is a different story, and we can talk a little bit about how the objective metric of weights are actually leading to improper use of the GLP-1s. But let's just kind of first talk about the subjective and symptomatic assessment and why we need to really look at peptides and hormones differently because they're subjective in nature. So when you look at these non-quantifiable outcomes,
Well, let's say it in layman's term, Jay, because most people aren't going to know what quantity, whatever the hell you're saying right now.
okay,
Let's dumb it down for us.
fair enough, fair enough.
Okay.
So I think the key thing is that there's no easy number to assess peptides and hormones. You simply look at the value of the peptides based on how they make you feel. You assess the value of the hormones based on how they make you feel. Uh, and then the issue becomes, well, is your individual assessment considered credible in the grand scheme of things? Well, the FDA before a few weeks ago would say, well, despite the benefit that you're feeling with HRT, we are going to put a black box label on hormone replacement therapy because of this perceived risk. Now, all of a
They
sudden,
did, and that's also what they did with opioid
yeah,
medications, right?
yeah,
Even though millions said, yeah, they work for pain. Well, the FDA is saying, well, they cause pain. So it's the same thing.
it is the same thing where when you're dealing with so again, it's like big word alert, right? Non quantifiable outcomes, right? When people simply say, I feel better, because it's a perception, because it's a feeling, it comes down to who has the loudest voice in the room. And unfortunately, a lot of times, the loudest voice in the room is not the voice that's in the best interest of the patients. Fortunately, because of when it is kind of sad to acknowledge, but because of a lot of the missteps that were made by health policy experts who, quite frankly, should have known better over the past few years, we're starting to see a more individualized approach where patients are saying, "Hey, how I feel is the most important thing. So I'm going to take an active role in my treatment paradigm because that's the most important thing to me."
Yeah.
And God bless all the patients who are taking that role because that's essentially what healthcare is about. As a physician, my responsibility is to help you, the patient, optimize the quality of your health. Anything out of that is, I mean, what am I even doing? Right.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the benefit of peptides and hormones, what you're talking about is adjuncts to optimize the lifestyle for patients. So clearly, as somebody like yourself who's health conscious, who does her best to make the right health decisions, whether that's in terms of dieting, exercising, what have you have to take into account the health constraints you have. You have to take into account the limitations of your own lifestyle. But within that framework, you're doing the best that you can. So let the peptides and the hormones, when administered properly, optimize your quality of health within your lifestyle. And that people always say, oh, well, GLP-1 medications are quote unquote cheating. That's the kind of like big term these days. It's
Yes.
cheating.
Yes. Yes.
And that's almost equivalent of saying, well, if you truly have pain, then you don't need opioids long term. Or if you truly doubt the COVID vaccine, you're a vaccine skeptic, right? So the room for conversation immediately leaves because you're designating labels. And the problem is that if we were living the lifestyle that we were living hundreds of thousands of years ago, where a majority of the day was spent walking around outdoors with activity, sure, okay, we would not need the medications that we do. But our biology is not in alignment with the environment that we live in this modern era. So why not allow medications to help address the chronic stress that we feel in our day-to-day lifestyles? Why not let medications help give you that energy boost given the exercise constraints that you have given your work requirements? These are medications to help align your environment with your biology so that you can live an optimized lifestyle given the realities of our day-to-day existence.
Yeah, you when you said cheating, it's funny you should say that because I was at a local television station recording a segment, and I noticed one of the hosts. I said, "Oh, you lost a lot of weight. Are you doing GLPs?" He's like, "No, I'd like to do it the hard way." So yeah, there's that misconception if you're using peptides, you're not doing it the hard way and you are cheating. But from where I'm sitting, peptides have really just improved people's quality of life. It's just that we don't have the information that we need because it's so overwhelming. There's so many different peptides that we need to have a peptides for dummy conversation.
Well, I think to that point, what we need to have is an honest conversation, top to bottom, about the benefits of peptides and hormones. Because what has happened for the longest time is they were deemed kind of outside of the normal scope of clinical medicine, despite the benefits that were known. Insulin is a peptide. So
Sure. Yeah.
the first medication that was a peptide widely disseminated was insulin. And if you go to a local endocrinologist, they will recommend for patients who have a hemoglobin A1C, average blood sugar above a certain level, they will recommend insulin as a peptide. So there is kind of this double speak when it comes to the peptides. And I think what that has led to is a lot of individuals then taking on a self-empowered role of broadcasting their experiences with peptides. What we
Right.
need is, and to the FDA's credit and to the DHS's credit, they want to have open conversations from the top to the bottom about the value of peptides and hormones and really opening up the conversation. So now there's a lot of credible information around the benefits of peptides when used properly in conjunction with lifestyle and dieting changes. But that's with all medications. If you are a hypertensive patient and you are smoking and engaging in high stress activities, there is no medication out there that will help you if you don't make the lifestyle changes. And
Yeah.
and I think what we need to do is, and Claudia, you can speak to this way more than I can. We need to stop moralizing certain clinical conditions. Like if you have, let's say, a fractured foot, there's no honor in toughing it out. Do what you need to do in order
Sure.
to properly rehabilitate. If you are not able to get the level of exercise you would on your own because you have to work two jobs to take care of your family and you have children on the way, there's no shame in utilizing peptides and hormones to help maintain your level of health given your economic constraints. And I think that's what people need to understand. Healthcare is not just your health in isolation. Healthcare is part of the broader continuum of your existence as a human being. And so why wouldn't you use something to help you live the best life possible?
I agree. My mom is 90. We couldn't get her blood sugars down, and she's on metformin. That poor woman, she stops eating at 5 o'clock at night. She still goes to the gym 5 days a week. We couldn't get those blood sugars down. I said, Mom, let's try a peptide. She didn't know what that was. So we went to her doctor because she wouldn't feel comfortable seeing somebody virtually. She likes to have her doctor, that's very common. And she started at a quarter milligram of Ozempic. That woman's her she tests every day. Her blood sugar, I think her number was 115. Great number. So they work, and we just need to have the conversation. It's not cheating, and who cares if it is cheating? Do what makes you feel good. I'm walking around, Jay. I'm seeing children who are obese. Teenagers are so big right now. We have set these kids up for failure. We have set these kids up for a lifetime. When I see really big kids, I see a life of diabetic neuropathy, of high blood pressure. So we need to do more. But I think we've just created a country of convenience, the drive-throughs, the fast foods, and when you're using a peptide, we have to be honest. Yeah, it's an appetite suppressant and it shuts off food noise. And sometimes, even people like me, of course I have food noise. I bake 6 days a week. I cook. I mean, we're Italians in this household, so there's a lot of food. And sometimes food noise comes with it. There's no more food noise. And I've been posting more content about it. What I've also noticed, and I want to try different peptides instead of, like the tennis elbow and you've got knee pain. Well, there's different peptides that can help with all of these things. I think the first thing is people have to consult with a doctor because that's where you have to start. Because I have so many questions. Well, how much is it? Which one should I use? Which one does insurance cover? And, if you're one of my followers, you need set up a consultation with someone like Jay. Jay's going to take time, and Jay, I don't promote people. I'm not one of those. I don't like to promote people, but I trust Jay, Dr. Joshi, when it comes to this. Set up that consult, have the conversation. What are your goals with peptides? Can they be helpful for pain? If you're 280 pounds and you're using a peptide and you lose 100 pounds, chances are your pain is going to improve because of all of that inflammation that your body is, right? You lose 100 pounds, it's going to help your pain. Are there specific peptides for pain? That's a conversation you need to have with Jay, and that's why we're doing this podcast today.
Yeah, and I think what people need to understand is there is really no disconnect between the peptide and the hormone world and what is considered traditional clinical medicine. I think we create these artificial distinctions because people have a political spin on your individualized healthcare, and nobody should come in between you and your health. You
Yeah.
should always do what's in the best interest of your health. And like I had mentioned earlier, if there are certain constraints to living the best life that you have, you should take the medicines that would help you. Nobody shames somebody for taking blood pressure medicine. Nobody shames somebody for taking cholesterol medications. They don't come to you and say, well, why can't you control your stress on your own? Well, why can't
Sure.
you improve your cholesterol with your diet? No, people understand that there are lifestyle restrictions that are just part of our culture. Like,
Right. If you're
big,
working 6 days a week, you're going to have a difficult time
yeah,
getting to the gym. And if you're
unfortunately,
working
to everything.
12
Yeah.
yeah, if you're working 12 hours a day, it's not going to be easy for you to get out. But I got to say that food noise, so many people in this country really struggle with that food noise, and that's where the peptides help. Now, I will say that what becomes confusing is if you're scrolling on TikTok, you see people who are selling these peptides that you can reconstitute, which means you're just adding bacteriostatic water to the actual powder. But that's when it becomes confusion. I don't know where those peptides are coming from. And that's something that I think people really need to be careful about. I don't know. I'm not saying a whole lot of bad things have happened because I don't know one way or the other. But you're injecting something into your body. You need to be sure that you have good, safe peptides.
Yeah.
And
So
I mean, you send out your peptides; they're already drawn up because that's a question a lot of people ask.
So there's a
Um,
couple of things with that. So let's go maybe step by step because I think you brought up two big points that are both worth addressing. So the food noise and then the availability of the peptides and reconstitution and things of that nature. So let's start with the reconstitution and the peptide availability. Um, the pandemic has really destroyed, and in some ways rightfully so, the credibility of the traditional medical infrastructure because patients realize that the policymakers who should have known better were not giving fully accurate information, that everything was a spin. As a result of that, patients have taken it on their own to research the medications, to find medications on their own. And the growth in direct to consumer peptide uptake is a result of patients losing trust in traditional healthcare. I'm with you 100% on that, and I get it. I worked at a vaccine clinic during COVID. I saw the misinformation firsthand. It was very unfair to many patients. But I'm asking you to really be careful about getting peptides directly from peptide vendors without any clinical oversight. The
Mhm.
reality is, if there is this label for research purpose only, not for
That's it.
human use or not for clinical use, that means that they don't necessarily need to provide medical grade quality, that they can simply provide some sort of medication to you and without any sort of legal liability, sell you something that you think is going to help you, but may have zero to no benefit at all. So I would really highlight, and again, acknowledging that the healthcare community did not do the best job during the pandemic and the credibility still needs to be rebuilt, and the growth of the peptide industry came as an outcry from patients saying, please tell me the truth, Dr. XYZ, please tell me the truth, healthcare institution ABC. So I get it. But I would really recommend that you get clinical oversight when it comes to peptides and hormones because you need to get the blood work. You need to get a baseline evaluation of where your health is because you truly can't know how you're improving unless you have a set baseline that's administered by a clinician.
Yeah,
So I
and
would
I think
really,
people are choosing those peptides because they're much cheaper. Right? So if you wanted to try a semaglutide and you want to reconstitute your own peptides, it's always going to be cheaper. But if it says for research purposes only, I don't know if you know what you're getting. So that's something I'd like to warn my followers about, not followers, but you know what I mean, people who follow us on our platforms. I don't like that word followers, but yeah, be really careful because once you start reconstituting your own peptides, if you haven't had the proper blood work done, um, you don't know what you're injecting yourself with.
and again, it's not to say that you cannot do it.
Mm,
Of course, you as a patient can obtain the information. Just the learning curve is much more steep as opposed to having a physician, having clinical
so
oversight.
steep.
It just makes the process much easier. And
So
truly,
confusing, Jay. When you try to reconstitute your own peptides and you're new to the peptide game, oh my goodness, because I did, I said, oh, I can do this. I mean, ChatGPT and we were on a first name basis. We were arguing by how much backwater but a lot of people do it without any problems. But I would prefer, especially for my senior constituents, if this is something that you're looking to do, schedule a consultation with a doctor because it's very, very overwhelming. There's so much information out there.
Yeah, I would add one last thing. So the GLP-1 medication, semaglutide and tirzepatide, and soon, so we have quite a few patients who are on retatrutide. We're starting to kind of roll that out now to a larger patient population. So there's going to be a third generation of GLP-1 medications. They're very safe, very low side effect profile. Thank God that is the case because there is a lot of misuse on the dosaging, particularly as patients become more aggressive and trying to lose weight much more quickly than they should.
Yes.
If you
Hmm.
lose weight too quickly, your body cannot acclimate. You risk having low bone density. You risk having soft tissue injury. So a
Yeah.
lot of these things that you see in the news about bone fracture risk, soft tissue injuries, they are not necessarily side effects of the GLP-1 medications. They are side effects of the GLP-1 medications used too aggressively without clinical oversight. So again, this is not to disparage any patients from taking their own health into account. uh, I believe in patient empowerment, but I also believe in this being a partnership with some degree of clinical oversight, some degree of patient empowerment.
Well, we're
Um,
seeing a lot of lawsuits too circulate around the GLPs, and I think they're focusing it towards, people who have developed eating disorders. I mean, that's what lawyers do, Jay. So there's always going. So we definitely, because we've been following that pretty closely. We started calling it the war on GLPs. If you can sue someone, they're going to do it, whether it's opioid medications or GLPs. But yeah, I think, if you are somebody, whether you're trying to lose 100 pounds, uh, my boss, I work during the day. My boss he's a pretty big guy, and he was a respiratory therapist for many years. He just started his GLP. He's at quarter milligram of Zepbound, and he's lost 14 pounds in 2 weeks. And he walks every day. And he said, he came in my office, he said, Claudia, what is that called again, the what kind of noise? I said, food noise. He says, I don't have that. He said, usually at nighttime he would snack all the time, and it really turned off the food noise. So I love seeing all of.
Good noise. If you don't mind, I want to maybe touch on that a little bit because it's been brought up a
Sure.
few times.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of misinformation about how the GLP-1s affect your brain. It leads to mood disorders and things of that nature. What the literature suggests that this concept of food noise is part of a broader hunger complex. And again, I'm sorry if I'm throwing out these big words, but basically it's saying that the hunger you feel is a function of two things: psychological hunger and physiologic hunger. Fancy ways of saying that when you're hungry, sometimes it's because your body needs the calories. So your body's saying, I am losing out on calories. I have no energy to consume. Give me some food as energy. That's
Mm-hmm.
physiologic hunger. The second thing is psychological hunger, meaning you're eating out of a stress response. Now, again, modern lifestyle, we're sitting in our cars all day. We're sitting in our office all day. We have a lot of family stress. We don't get outdoors as much. We don't have as much physical activity. So there's a chronic stress that's built up that can manifest as psychological hunger, meaning you are hungry because of a mental response to stress. And, I recently coined the phrase, food is dopamine,
Mm-hmm.
meaning the food that you provide is not necessarily for caloric sustenance, meaning it's not for, providing for your body, it's to address a stress response. So when people talk about, oh, the food noise is gone, essentially what they're demonstrating is that they are responding positively to the GLP-1 medications by eliminating the psychological, the mental stress response and utilizing food as a solution to that mental stress response. That's a positive thing. Now, the key here, though, is to recognize that any benefit with gone overboard can turn the other way around, can turn into a net negative. So
Sure.
when patients are looking at the positive mental benefit of reducing the psychological food noise, they chase it more than what they perhaps should. And for physicians who are maybe trained as classic primary care physicians who don't understand peptides and are just kind of jumping onto the peptide bandwagon, they may not understand that, hey, if you jump up too much too quickly, you can start to have an effect where the patients are now becoming more focused on the mental response as opposed to recognizing that weight loss needs to be done in a slow and steady
Yeah.
manner.
And I've
So
seen
again,
that happen. I've seen that happen in people where they just became so fixated on it.
yeah,
Um, and I think that's like an area I don't have, because I've watched that happen with a family member. She got lost so much weight so quickly and just looked horrible, just like so drawn. And you're seeing it with all the celebrities, right? I mean, we've got shrinking celebrities, and I think, as a 57-year-old woman, thank God I'm secure, because I could see how shrinking women can really take a toll on. Everybody has new faces, which I'd love to have, by the way, and these new
you and me both.
bodies. But yeah. So I think what really helped me when I started with you is, and you kept saying you have to start slow. You do have to start slow, because those side effects can be brutal for some people. And I know that's what a lot of the people who follow me, they wanted to know about side effects. I think for some people, when my daughter started, my daughter's 24, she's an adult, she had extreme fatigue when she first started. And we're none of us are big people, but we got a little fluffy and we wanted to lose it. So that fatigue, and my
Let's talk a little bit
pharmacist.
about the side effects.
Yes,
So I think
absolutely.
that's important to touch. You know, so there's true side effects to the medication itself, and then there's a side effect from dosing a little too much or a little uh, too little. Uh, the true side effects kind of happen stepwise. So a lot of times patients will say, "Oh, I have a little bit of nausea when I first started the medications." Well, that's because the digestive system is now focused on fat burning as opposed to carbohydrate burning, and that shift now decreases the rate of food going through your digestive system, basically going from one end to the other. So that nausea really is an effect of just the shift in the digestive rate. So that's why it's important to start off slow so that that shift in the digestive rate doesn't affect the patient too much. Oftentimes, patients who are successful with GLP-1 medications initially then start to hit what's called a weight loss plateau. They'll start to experience symptoms like constipation or fatigue. And a lot of that is due to the water imbalance that takes place through prolonged GLP-1 use. The GLP-1 medications use the water as basically fuel to help promote the weight loss itself. If you're not properly hydrated, if you're not in a proper steady state of the GLP dosage, your body can start to recoil by conserving the water, essentially saying, hey, I'm not comfortable losing weight at this rate that you're essentially suggesting by dosing the GLP-1 medications the way that you are. Let's slow down and I'm going to hold on to some of the water. So that's why having a dosage that's reflective of how your body is responding is critical, because what we perceive as side effects are really just dosage adjustments.
Hmm.
And the true side effects, where if you have, let's say, a medullary thyroid condition or something quite significant, quite rare, those are the things you need to rule out by having an initial clinical evaluation to rule out any sort of true contraindications to the GLP-1 medications. But I would argue that majority of what people are suggesting as side effects to the medications can be alleviated by recognizing how your body is responding to the GLP-1 medications and adjusting the doses accordingly.
Yeah, I think also when people hit a plateau, they get frustrated, or they think the doctor isn't giving them enough of the medication that they're paying for. But if I could, if you're watching this, whether it's on Jay's channel or mine, really you've got to do this medication very, very slowly, because those side effects can be. Yeah, I've watched it with another coworker, but he was using it for diabetes. He was so tired, and they just switched his peptide, and he did much, much better. Um, so that's why I think when you talk about when people want to save money and they're reconstituting, I think it could be unsafe. So, which is why I think Prestige 2.0 could be a really good resource for people.
No, thank you, and I appreciate that. We do offer free consultation, so if you are taking GLP-1 medication somewhere else, and you have any questions, just give us a call, go to our website, select the free consultation link. I'm more than happy to talk, particularly if you guys are working with Claudia or you're part of a lot of the patient advocacy that she does. I'm a big fan. I was personally affected and personally benefited from Claudia's advocacy. So I think that what she's doing is very important, and I would love to support those who are working alongside her. So please consider me a free resource in that capacity. And if there's anything I can do to help from a clinical standpoint, obviously you guys know how to get a hold of me.
Yeah, and it's not hard. I'm going to put a link in the video wherever I post it. Prestige 2.0 link will be there. Click on the link, set up that free consultation, and Jay will take you through the process. Peptides aren't just for women. Jay, you also have you do a whole thing for men. I don't know much about that. But so many questions people are asking us, and there's so many different peptides. So I just can't give people the answers they want. Start by scheduling that consultation. I know a lot of people were asking about price, so I think it's safe to say we can say that peptides probably going to run you about $250 to $300 a month. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. And we're actually
Yeah.
working on a price transparency page. So we're going to have regular updates on the pricing right on the homepage. So if you are interested in coming to work with us, or if you're interested in kind of seeing how our price compares to people that you are currently going with, just take a look. I think the market has matured enough to the point where people have a general understanding of what is a fair price for the peptides and the hormones. And I think in this post insurance world that we live in, it's important to have pricing discussions with your healthcare providers, your physicians, nurses, what have you, because it's incumbent on patients to understand not just the clinical benefits, but the financial cost to obtain those clinical benefits.
Yeah. And I just want to give people an example. So my mom, she has her pen, her Ozempic pen. Your peptides don't come in that pen. So you draw up your peptides, and people receive monthly peptides, and you give them instructions how to inject themselves. But let's just talk about pricing, because that's going to be the biggest question. So um, you have different doses. So if you're going to get more of a dose, it's going to cost you more money, right? So
Not necessarily. There is a range that we're able to offer because we are a practice that has sufficient volume. We are able to get certain price benefits that we're passing along to the patient. So
good.
most
And okay, sorry, one question. People want to know, how does terzepatide differ from semaglutide and retatrutide? There's a lot of tides.
yeah. So when you talk about the tirzepatide, so let's talk about tirzepatide first, because I think that's an important one to talk about, because people see the GLP-1s and now they're starting to see the GIP-1s, and what do all these things mean? Triple receptor, double receptor, single
Designer.
receptor,
Designer peptides.
designer peptides. I think the main thing to understand about peptides is that there's a lot of kind of marketing hysteria around that. I think the key thing to understand is what is beneficial for you. So the tirzepatide has the GLP, the glucagon-like peptide, where it helps to adjust the average baseline sugar rate to focus on fat metabolism, not carbohydrate metabolism. It also has a glucose-dependent, and again, big word, insulin-trophic polypeptide. Again, just the fancy way of saying it helps to address different aspects of the hunger complex. The retatrutide then addresses yet another receptor. The key thing to understand here is that if you are sufficiently losing weight with the semaglutide, with the initial GLP-1 medications, there really is no need to shift unless you're experiencing dose independent side effects, meaning to the actual medication itself, or if you feel like you're at a weight loss plateau in which a stronger GLP-1, like a second generation tirzepatide or third generation retatrutide, would help. Again, because of the nature of patient empowerment following the pandemic, a lot of patients are researching the peptides themselves and get enamored with the increased weight loss strength of retatrutide and tirzepatide. I prescribe retatrutide very selectively. I
Mhm.
prescribe them among patients who are extremely active, that go to the gym 7 days a week, that have clear fitness goals, and we start at a very low dose. It is very powerful, and there are a lot of people that are peddling improper retatrutide formularies because they see that it's just kind of this new buzzword that's gaining a lot of notoriety in the online circles. I would be very careful. If you guys are serious about retatrutide and want to have an honest conversation, I'm more than happy to talk to you about that, but I think that we should approach that much more slowly than we would the tirzepatide and the semaglutide, because it is a much more potent agent when it comes to the weight loss itself.
Okay.
What I would tell patients who are taking the medications, retatrutide, tirzepatide, semaglutide, don't chase the number on the scale. Chase the food noise. Chase the symptomatic benefits that you're getting from the medications, and the weight loss will follow. In fact, if you focus on how the medicine is helping you with your lifestyle, you will naturally calibrate to a sustainable weight, and you won't
Yeah.
lose too much and you won't lose too little.
I was talking with my pharmacist and he summarized it perfectly. He said, for me and my wife, the GLP, it's basically oh God, what is it called when you just eat for a certain amount of hours out of the intermittent fasting? He
Yeah.
said, I have one great meal a day and I have some fruit or something small. And that's kind of what it felt like, was just intermittent fasting. But I'm very aware of what I put in my body. And I think, if you folks are watching this, if this is something you're interested in doing, I hope this motivates you, because I think from where I'm sitting, I'm just seeing a whole lot of positive results. So reach out to Prestige 210. And how this works is, after you do this free consultation with Jay, he's going to set up a plan for you, but he's not done with you. You're going to be meeting with Jay on a weekly basis to reevaluate how you're doing. Does anything need to be tweaked? And Jay isn't just going to give you that peptide. He's giving you, the resources, the education that you folks may not be able to get. So it was a real pleasure to sit down with you, Jay. And don't forget, folks, visit Prestige 2.0. I think you're going to be pleased.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.